Hey there, I'm Rachel Ehring, and you're listening to the Top Music Piano Podcast. Get inspired as we discuss creative resources, trends in piano pedagogy, ways to grow your income and streamline your studio, and new ways to engage your students each week. If you are a teacher who wants to go beyond the method books to create an innovative studio that fosters lifelong music makers, you've come to the right place. Hello, piano teachers. I hope that your year is off to a great start. I know that my year personally is off to a busy start. I decided to do January recitals this year instead of doing our normal Christmas recitals, which made December feel a lot less hectic. But now I have to get everything ready for the recitals later this month. So busy, but all good things. This month at Top Music, we are talking about multi-teacher studios, and today I have a fellow California studio owner on the show. I am amazed by everything that Shannon has done in the past few years, and so I knew I wanted to have her come on the podcast for this particular topic. Getting to know Shannon has been an inspiration to me, and I know that you are going to enjoy getting to know her today as well. Shannon began her piano journey at the age of 9 and taught her first lesson at age 16, eventually transitioning to full-time teaching in 2019. Despite previously balancing piano lessons with a full-time office job, Shannon's passion for music never wavered. After relocating from Los Angeles to California's Central Valley, she seized the opportunity to follow her dream and established Creative Cultivation Studio in 2020. In 2023, the studio found its home in downtown Verne, embodying a culture of kindness, creativity, and nurturing. Shannon and her team focus on personalized lessons tailored to each student's unique needs, fostering their growth into skilled and confident musicians. Through her studio, Shannon shares her love for music while inspiring creativity and knowledge in her students' lives. Here's my talk with Shannon. Welcome to the show, Shannon. I'm so glad to have you joining me today. Would you mind introducing yourself and tell us a little bit about your business?
Sure. My name is Shannon Saravia. I own Creative Cultivation Studio. It's a small multi-teacher studio in SoCal, offering private and group music lessons, and we also do early childhood music classes.
Great, thank you. So I would love to hear a little about your journey that brought you to this point. Where did you start? How did you decide you wanted to be a multi-teacher studio owner?
It has been quite a ride. I actually began teaching when I was 16 years old. My mom told me I had to pay for my car insurance and gas, and she was like, here are some kids that we know who want to learn piano, and we have a piano at our house, and you know how to play, so you're going to teach them. I knew nothing about teaching, so I just picked up the method books that I learned with when I started, and basically kind of was self-taught as a teacher in the beginning. I continued teaching in students' homes through high school and college, all the way up through, I had a 9-to-5 office job after that, and I still kind of taught on the side. I actually never stopped teaching since I was 16, so it's been a long time. I did quit my office job in 2019 and just decided to focus on teaching. I took a job at an independent music academy. They needed someone in front desk, and a teacher position also opened up, so I took it. At that point, I said, I just need some hours and also an income, so let's do this. And I did that for most of 2019. In December of that year, my husband, his job actually moved us to the California Central Valley, so about 4 hours north of us, to the Fresno area. I was only able to keep about 3 of my students at the time. That only 3 were willing to stay online with me. So I said, well, I'll take it. I have no idea how to teach online, but we'll figure it out. This was pre-COVID. And basically, I started to grow just a little bit more of a student base at that time. Some people came to me. I went to some people. Some were online. It was a very big mixture. I was just taking whatever I could get at that point. Then COVID hit. And my student base actually grew from those 10 students to over 50 students within 2 months, all online. I was teaching 5 days a week, 6 to 8 hours a day. It was a lot, but I was enjoying it. I didn't feel like the stress that I felt with like the 9 to 5 office job that I had had before. So I did that for a couple of years. So we moved back to Southern California in 2021. I continued teaching 50 plus lessons a week by myself online and out of our home. I stopped going to students' houses at that point. Then in 2022, we found out that we were expecting our first baby. And the first thing I thought was, how am I going to take a maternity leave with 50 plus students all by myself on top of admin work and everything? So my mind went into troubleshoot mode, and I ended up within a couple of months hiring an admin to start helping me and learn the ropes of everything. I also hired on 3 teachers within a few months to take my students during the leave. They were just teaching remotely and at students' homes. And we also were able to start offering guitar and voice lessons because I don't teach those, but these other teachers were able to teach them. So we also gained more students in this process. Then after I came back from maternity leave, I only came back part-time, and I ended up keeping all of these teachers on still as remote and in-home teachers, which was pretty cool. I wasn't totally sure if it was going to last or make it. And I let them know that because I had never done any of this before. And I told them, we're going to do this as long as we can, but I can't guarantee anything. So let's see how it goes. Then in 2023, I found the most perfect little commercial space down the street from where I lived, right above a coffee shop and a Mexican restaurant in our city's like Old Town area. So I signed the lease, and it has 2 teaching spaces. Then we began operating just a few months later. We did have to wait for permits and everything. But since then, so that was in the beginning of 2023, we started operating out of there that summer. Since then, our teaching staff has grown to 6 teachers, including myself. We now have 3 admin staff, as well as 2 sub-teachers on our roster. We launched Parent and Me classes, preschool kinder age classes for kids, and we have about 75 weekly private students, as well as hundreds of families who have already joined our early childhood classes so far. So it's been an incredible boom, and it's been a very crazy journey to get here.
Wow, what a crazy story. They say that necessity is the mother of invention. And it sounds like that's kind of how it all came about. Like you had all these students, you didn't know what you were going to do on maternity leave. And so you just made it happen. That's incredible. I would love to go back to when you said that you started teaching 50 students on Zoom. Where did those students come from? Were they ones that you had previously taught in person, or were they new students to you?
They were mainly new students. So I advertised on Thumbtack primarily. I also posted a couple other places like lessons.com. Those 2 actually I still use to this day. They're pretty good for getting leads for us. But Thumbtack just blew up. There was a point where I didn't cap my budget to spend on that app, and they just flooded in. I think one week I had 15 new leads, which it does cost you to get the leads, but the return on investment from those is off the charts.
And so now with your space there in Laverne, how are you getting most of the leads? Is it a lot of word of mouth, or is it advertising?
I think it's kind of a combination. So we do still use Thumbtack and lessons.com, as I mentioned. Word of mouth is really good for us as well, especially as we've had more students grow, as well as our early childhood classes. People will tell kids at school or their other extracurriculars about us, and we do get a lot of students that way. But something that I've started using probably more so in the past year or so is local Facebook groups. It's a free way to advertise. The only catch is you have to watch their rules about when you can post, because they get very strict on that. So I honestly created a note in my phone with each day listed out and which groups that I can post on those days. And I'll just kind of rotate through there a couple times a month and post things like signups are open for our Parent and Me classes, or something about like we accept charter funds now and like homeschool local groups. So things like that, I'll just kind of rotate through. And let everyone in those groups know what we offer and that we're there.
Gotcha. Okay. I would love to hear just a little more about your space. You said that you have 2 teaching spaces, but it sounds like you must have a large space for group classes. Is that right?
Yes. So our space, it's kind of unique. We do have one smaller lesson room, probably like the size of a bedroom or so, not too big, that we do lessons in. And then we have a larger main room. So our main room is pretty big and open. We do conduct lessons in it, but we also have a giant rug in that room to offer our parent and me classes so that all the toddlers and babies can come sit on the rug and be comfortable. We also do part of our piano playtime, our preschool kinder classes on that rug as well. It's just a nice big open space. Our waiting area is at one end, and then we have a piano at the other end, and the rug's kind of in the middle. So it's a very warm living roomish setup, very inviting.
So, what do your days look like now? You said that you went back part-time, but this sounds like a lot to manage. What are you doing day to day in the business for the studio?
Well, I'm definitely not teaching 50 plus lessons every week anymore. I currently personally teach about 12-ish lessons a week. Sometimes I'll do the early childhood classes, a parent and me class, maybe once or twice a week. I will soon, at the end of this month when they start up, be teaching our preschool kinder classes as well. I have 2 on my schedule if we get enough students in them that I'll be teaching. Aside from that, I will be at home with I have 2 toddlers, so I'm at home with them. And I do work from home during nap time. Like right now, it's nice and quiet. That's why. I spend nap times and evenings typically working on admin work. I'll create to-do lists for my admins or go through things that I need to go through, jumping through hoops for charter vendor approvals, things like that. But yeah, so 2 days a week I spend teaching, and the rest of the week is kind of, I take a step back and address things as needed, but my admins will handle most of things on those other days.
Yeah, it sounds like, in a way, a dream job for a busy mom, right? Because you have people supporting you and helping you out. Can you talk a little bit about how you balance all of that, though, as a business owner, a mom, a teacher? How does that work for you?
The biggest thing that I have learned is that there is so much power in being able to delegate. It creates more autonomy in the studio through admin staff and having systems in place for them to take over and know exactly what to do in any given situation. Having front desk coverage has been a game changer. We've only had that for about a year, and up to this point, it's only been part-time. I actually just this week hired on another front desk person to kind of be backup for when our main person is out. I mean, before that, during my maternity leave, it was really nice just even to have a remote admin who could handle things so that I could focus on the baby. Systems like my music staff have also been key with automating invoicing and everything. And she has learned how to use everything on my music staff and in all of our systems so well as well. She's kind of like my head admin, and she's able to also oversee and help and make judgment calls when I'm not available.
Gotcha. Okay. So when they're open on evenings and weekends and all of that, you have somebody there at the front desk managing all of that so you can be present with your family during those times when you're home.
Yeah, I have cut my teaching hours. So I used to, most teachers will teach something like noon or 2 p.m. till 8 or 9 p.m. But I told myself once I had kids that I would make being home in the evenings a priority with them. So right now I never teach later than 4:30. So I'm usually home by 5 so we can have our dinner and nighttime, bedtime routines and everything. And then I'm always there for that, which has been great. And knowing that they have that covered as well just gives me peace of mind. They know that they can always call me in case of emergency or anything, but it's really nice to not have to be the person on my computer or watching my phone 24/7 if a studio call comes in or something. And also having yelling toddlers in the background is difficult.
Yeah, for sure. Turns out toddlers have a lot of needs, don't they? What advice do you have for a teacher who might be thinking about making their very first hire?
I think it's important to find someone who has a similar teaching philosophy if you're looking for a teacher, as well as a similar personality to you. And that personality part can apply to either teacher or admin if that's what you're looking for. Just because parents, families are so used to interacting only with you that the change of adding another person or having someone who's vastly different from you could be a sort of shock to them. And it could leave a bad taste in their mouth. So having someone who is very similar to you and understands what you're trying to bring to the table and offer these students is extremely important. I've personally hired a lot of college students and kind of had a sort of mentorship relationship with them where I'm actively helping them learn how to embrace their teaching style and grow in their teaching knowledge and skills. So I offer them a lot of shadowing opportunities. I will sit down and go over best methods as far as online lessons or working with littles. I will go over curriculum with them if they're not sure how to go about certain things. I go over lesson plans and things with them. I actually do pay my teachers for lesson planning time, which is not something I think a lot of schools or studios do, only because I've been in that teaching at a music school position before. And I was expected to be able to bring quality lessons, but I wasn't being paid for the work that I was done on the back end of preparing for all of these. So I wanted to encourage them in that. So I give them a set amount of time, depending on how many students they have each week, to be able to prepare, even if it's 5 or 10 minutes, or getting in early to set something up for them. So I do encourage that with them. But yeah, that's my advice as far as.
Yeah, that's helpful. And I think when you were talking about the philosophy, finding someone who shares your philosophy, I think that helps it make sense to parents as well. Because if you hire somebody who is completely different than you or different than your brand, parents aren't quite sure, what to do with that. And they might say, well, I want you to teach my child because I don't understand what this person is doing, or they're doing something different or whatever. So I think keeping that unity in your staff is really wise.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
What would you say are the biggest day-to-day struggles of owning a multi-teacher studio?
I would say it's probably been learning how to delegate well, what to delegate. Like when you have this staff, it's more of a question of how do I hand it off and not worry about it? I feel like a lot of us who have run our own studios and just been one person shows are so used to holding on and dealing with everything that it's hard for us to let it go. So that's probably been one of the biggest challenges. And I feel like even though I've had an admin and other teachers for a couple of years now, almost 3 years actually, I feel like just within the past probably 6 months, maybe to a year, I've been able to fully start letting go of things, which has been just such a relief. And it feels like such a burden off of me when I finally did it. This week, I actually had a family emergency come up and was mostly offline for a couple of days. But the nice thing was that my studio didn't skip a beat. My admins found subs for my lessons. They handled a super heavy influx of signups for classes that we just opened signups for. And they did not need to reach out to me once for any of it. So yeah, it was just a huge relief being able to focus on what was going on at home and not needing to worry about that. So that was definitely, I guess, reassuring that this is going well.
Yeah. And I think that's the sign of a really good manager, that you're able to empower them and let them do their thing, work their magic, and you don't have to be involved in all of those details. That's really good. Kudos to you, Shannon. So I know that group classes are a big part of your business, and I want to talk about that because it seems to be kind of a hot topic among piano teachers and music teachers is, should we do group classes? How to make them work? All of that. So let's dive in a little bit, if you don't mind sharing. So share a little bit about what group classes you guys offer. I know you mentioned the ones for little ones, the parent and me. Tell us a little more about that.
Yes. So actually, it was right around the time we were opening our commercial space, our physical studio in downtown Laverne. that I was also working on creating a curriculum for a Parent in Me class. And this, I actually got this question recently of, did you do that because you had just had a baby and it was at the forefront of your mind, or was this always something you wanted to do? And I had to think about it for a minute. I think I had always wanted to implement something like this, but I wasn't sure how to go about it. I didn't have the training or the knowledge or anything to be able to launch something like this. So I didn't really know where to start. Then I had my own baby. And so he was about 6 months old when I finally decided to start figuring out how to do this and put together a curriculum. I actually got the inspiration from Cheyenne. I think her info is like Cheyenne's Piano Studio.
I know who you're talking about.
She sold a template on Teachers Pay Teachers for, I think she calls hers a music club, but it's for little ones, a Parent in Me, sort of a class like this. So I bought that and as my framework, and I kind of pulled from that and tried to figure out how to create my own while also keeping in mind like the developmental milestones of the little ones that would be in the class, because all of that was at the forefront of my mind. Is my baby meeting the milestones they need to be meeting? And I also want to introduce music to him. And how am I going to do that? Which, I mean, he also got plenty of exposure in the womb, hearing 50 piano lessons a week. But just thinking on those terms of how can I launch this and create this curriculum well? Because I don't just want to start something and figure it out along the way. So I created a curriculum. It's a 6-week class. And I actually started them at a park because we didn't have access to our studio yet. It was really fun. We had just a few families to start, but then word about them spread like wildfire. I trained a couple of my teachers how to lead them as well, and they did fantastic. And one of them actually ended up helping me create a Spanish version of the class so that we could sing all of the same songs, but in Spanish, like Wheels on the Bus, Old MacDonald, that sort of a thing. So that was really fun. And people were really interested in that, especially bilingual families or people who just wanted to expose the babies to that. So those classes are intended for ages 0 to 3. We've had babies as young as 2 months old come to our class. And I've told them, wow, you're brave. But it's so fun because our teachers are also taught to tell the moms or the parents, whoever brings the kids, to help modify for the age of the child who's in the class. So if they do have a newborn, it's honestly just like stimulation, kind of tracking things, or they can give them tummy time since we have our nice clean rug that we don't let anyone walk on with shoes. We have a big old sign that says that on there. But that's kind of our littles classes. Those go to age 3. And then we start private lessons at 4 in our studio. But there was that little gap between ages 3 and 4. The 4-year-olds weren't really interested in the Parent in Me classes. They kind of felt like it was a little bit babyish. There's a 6-month-old next to me. Do something more exciting. So that got me thinking, last year in 2024, we need to find something for this kind of in-between age where they're not really ready. A lot of 4-year-olds aren't ready for private lessons in anything. So oftentimes parents will wait. Or that was another thing, is that we heard so many stories of parents and families getting turned away from other music schools or teachers saying, your child's too young or too distractible, bring them back when they're 6 or 7. And that broke my heart a little bit, because I would be so sad if I took my child somewhere and they said, no, he's too young, even though technically he meets the age requirement. He's not going to do well here. We're not going to take him. So I thought to myself, let's create a space for these kids. I ended up taking Amy Elmore's, what is it called?
Preschool piano. Preschool piano blueprint.
Preschool group piano blueprint. Yes. I ended up taking Amy Elmore's preschool group piano blueprint course last year. And that gave me everything I needed to get a program like this off the ground. So I decided to make this program available to ages 3.5 to 5 years old, sort of a preschool, TK, kindergarten age. Anyone in that range can come to this class. And that one also took off pretty quickly. We had a lot of interest. That class is actually 12 weeks long. So it's a little longer and it builds a whole foundation for basic theory. We use piano safari rhythms in it, as well as we build off of the My First Piano Adventures book, and they learn the beginning of keyboard geography, things like that, and a rote song or two. So it's really, really fun. They have a mini recital, sort of a showcase at the very end of it, and they absolutely loved it. So we're about to start our second 12-week session of those classes. And I also designed a kind of like a level 2 class to that we're going to launch very soon as well.
I was going to ask you if there's a second level or if it just restarts. So now you'll have level 1 and then the level 2 of kids continuing. Is that right?
Yes. Yeah. If they're not quite ready for private lessons at that point, we'll put them in level 2, which is where they'll learn like the rest of the white keys and more rote pieces, things like that. And we have levels kind of to our Parent and Me classes as well, so that if people want to continue coming, they're not just going to get the same exact class every single time. So we actually have 4 different classes for those that we've created over the past couple of years. The original Littles 1 class, music groups for Littles 2, which builds off of it. So, for example, in our first class, we learned piano and forte. And in Littles 2 class, we dive a little deeper into that. We learn crescendo, diminuendo, and we have songs and activities that go along with that. So those are the sort of things we do. And then we have the Spanish sing-along versions of each of those as well. So really excited to be able to offer so many things for kids under the age of 5.
Yeah, I think that's incredible what you're doing. I'm curious, how big are these classes, especially the preschool, the piano ones? What have you found to be the ideal size for the classes?
So our first session was this past fall. We limited them to 4 students in a class just because they don't have parent involvement in them. It's just teacher with 4 students. So we only have 1 teacher teaching those classes at a time. So we thought, for classroom control reasons, and especially since this was our first time going through the whole course, let's limit it to 4 and see how we feel. And we felt really good after going through those 12 weeks with 4 being a good number. This time around, we are having a couple of our classes have the main teacher as well as an assistant teacher helping out in them. So we're going to extend those and offer it to 6 kids at a time. Again, just kind of seeing what works. It's going to be a training opportunity for the assistant teacher so that they can take on their own classes in the future. But we figured we could make the classes a little bit bigger and give more kids an opportunity to join them in this case.
Yeah, that's kind of the numbers that I found work too for the preschoolers. If I'm teaching by myself, any more than 4 gets to be pretty chaotic. And you really need an assistant in there, even just to like take kids to the bathroom and stuff like that. There's always, something that the assistant could be helping with. I also saw that you have an accelerated piano program. I was curious what that is.
So our accelerated piano program, we started this, I think it was in the spring of 2024. We basically call our group piano lessons accelerated piano program. So I ended up taking Daniel Patterson's successful group lessons course in order to implement this. Group lessons have been on my mind for a couple of years now, but I wasn't sure how to do it. I wasn't prepared to buy all the equipment for it. I had no idea where to start or how to teach in that way. So I did hear about his course, actually had a consultation call with him beforehand, learned a lot about it, and then decided to pull the trigger. And I learned a lot from it. I think it is lots of valuable information for those classes that we offer. We have a maximum right now of 4 students per group class. We didn't try to convert our entire studio to that. I just didn't feel like fighting that battle with a lot of parents. I know a lot of people can do it and that it can be a good way to increase revenue in a studio. But with the culture of our studio as well, relationships, especially with one-on-one students, is very important to both teachers and the families. So we didn't want to push that on them if they didn't want to switch over to group lessons. We also, you heard how many of our early childhood classes are just full to the brim. So with students that little, group classes aren't really the thing for them, where they have to sit and independently practice for a chunk of the lesson and the time. So having the one-on-one option is a little bit better for them after they finish their group classes for the younger ones.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you for sharing that. Shannon, this has been so helpful. I feel like I could ask you like dozens more questions, but I don't want to make this podcast like 2 hours long. I'm curious if there's anything further that you would want to share to help teachers who are perhaps thinking of starting a multi-teacher studio, anything about hiring, renting a space, groups, anything else you want to add?
Oh my goodness. I could talk to anyone about all of those things for so long. I think some of the most important things are probably having systems in place so that as you hire people on, it's easy to show them, this is the system that I use. It's an easy way to follow it. And so that they don't have to really bother you too much about it. That's especially true as far as admin help. It also helps just to have people you can bounce ideas off of, because even being a multi-teacher studio owner, it can be very isolating, just kind of being by yourself, overseeing everything. So I'm really glad that I feel like I can talk to my admins about anything going on and they understand it, or the teachers understand all the teaching side of it. So it creates this sense of community, which has been really great. I think just being able to talk to other studio owners as well. We've found such a cool community on Instagram, I feel like. So finding people there, and on Facebook groups even, or in communities like that, I feel like can be extremely beneficial, where you can talk to people who have been where you are, or you can pour into people who are a couple steps behind you and give them advice of, here's what I did, trial and error. So I think just being open to talking to others and asking questions and having them help you make those decisions is really, really helpful, as well as other podcasts. I will say lots of these types of podcasts have helped me immensely in figuring out what sort of systems to implement. So I think that's probably my top advice. My last little piece of advice will be, consider having, even if you start with nothing else, starting with a sub teacher to have on call in case you're not able to teach one day. That could be a good way to start to introduce your students to someone else if you're considering hiring another teacher down the road. So
yeah, that's really good advice. And I've also found that it's a good way to sort of test out a teacher too, to see if it's going to be the right fit for your studio or for a particular student. In my multi-teacher situation here, I have teachers sub for each other, and you can kind of discover who's a good fit with who as far as students and teachers, and learn more about their teaching style and everything. Well, Shannon, if listeners have any questions or want to get in contact with you or learn more about your studio, where can they find you?
the best place is probably Instagram. Our name is at Creative Cultivation Studio. I typically am the one who oversees that. So if anyone would like to send a message, feel free. I would love to talk to you guys more.
Thank you so much, Shannon. It's been so fun hearing from you today, and I really appreciate you sharing your vast wisdom with us.
Thank you so much.
I hope you enjoyed the show today. If you haven't checked out the Top Music magazine for this month, it is all about multi-teacher studios, and it has a lot of tips and advice, whether you are thinking about hiring your first teacher or are already managing a team of teachers. One of the articles that I found interesting was an interview with a teacher who teaches in a multi-teacher studio rather than owns one, and why she prefers working for someone else. I think sometimes we assume that all the good piano teachers want to have their own private studios, but it turns out that isn't necessarily true. You can download your free copy of the magazine at topmusic.co/magazine. Thank you for listening to the show today, and I'll be back here next week with more piano teaching ideas for you. I'm Rachel Ehring, and you've been listening to the Top Music Piano Podcast. I'll speak with you again very soon.
How do you keep up to date with all the latest trends and research into music education? How do you connect with other teachers around the world and make sure your teaching stays fresh and relevant for students of all ages and stages, both now and into the future? I created our Top Music Pro membership to be the one-stop shop for music teaching resources, training, support and community, and I'd love for you to come and join us inside. With over 40 comprehensive training courses, hundreds of teaching demonstrations and lesson plans, free monthly sheet music, discounts and all the business and pedagogy support you could ever need, Top Music Pro is the community you've been looking for. If you're ready to level up your learning from the podcast and join thousands of other teachers in our global network, head over to topmusicpro.com today.